This is the Italian Real Estate Podcast, here to help you with the ins and outs and basics of Italian real estate, presented by ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com. Hello there, and welcome back to another edition of the Italian Real Estate Podcast, presented by ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com. Of course, we are back at it again with Italian attorney Marco Permunian. How are you doing today?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. And in this episode, we wanted to do a follow-up to a recent episode that we did on the monthly expectations that you can have regarding budget and what you can find in regards to property in Italy. But we wanted to do another episode talking a bit more about pricing for homes and talking about the cost overall, not just the monthly cost. So Marco, let's start at the first tier. What do you think a person could realistically expect within a price range from, say, about 20,000 euros until about maybe 60,000 euros?
First, let me say that for an American, this would probably sound like a very, very low budget. But in Italy, for an Italian at least, it's very realistic to be able to buy an apartment for a price within this price range. Of course, I'm talking about the higher end, 50,000, 60,000, but it's not uncommon to be able to find a one-bedroom apartment for 50 to 60,000 euros, excluding major cities. So I'm talking about the countryside, I'm talking about villages and little towns throughout Italy. And of course, we have said it many times, prices tend to be on the lower end in central Italy and southern Italy. And for example, in the outskirts of Rovigo, the city where my Italian office is located, you could easily find a one, even two-bedroom apartment for between 50 and 60,000 euros. Maybe not in the center, or maybe not a new apartment, brand new. Maybe it's something that requires some renovation works, but not a lot. Regarding southern Italy, I'd say it's realistic to find even single-family houses, older, probably within this price range. So 40, 50, maybe 60,000, that properties that require renovation works, even if I would say not heavy renovation works. And we've talked about the €1 houses in other episodes, and we have said that they're not really €1 because, they require a lot of renovation works, a renovation project or plan that you have to submit to the municipality before or after you purchase the property. And so in the end, the real cost eventually is probably more like 20 to 30,000 and up. Of course, where the very minimum is probably 20 to 30,000 euros in terms of investment to be able to then use the property that you bought for €1. Or we've said it many times in other episodes that in some cases it's not even €1, the purchase price, because it's a bid that starts from €1, but then the price ends up being higher. Also, going back to the very minimum 20,000, the minimum that we established for this price range, I would not exclude that we will be able to find in the countryside, especially in southern Italy, single family homes for that price that require heavy renovation work, so that are not habitable or that are habitable from a legal standpoint, but you could hardly live inside the house in its conditions. So a property that requires heavy renovation works. So 20,000 for the property, then you have to pay the notary fees and taxes, and of course 20,000 is only the actual cost of the property, but then such property would require likely very heavy renovation works. For example, we've been asked a few times from people from across the world if it was possible to purchase a house where you could live in for 20 to 30,000 euros, and I don't believe it's at all possible in Italy, with a few very, very isolated exceptions. So yes, Italy is a very, very affordable country. Real estate prices can be very low, but I hardly believe that 20 to 30,000 euros can get you a property where you can live in without performing heavy renovation works.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know there's sometimes friends that I've had over the years that have told me about the prices that they've paid for their homes, and it's left me in complete shock thinking about how that for the price of what you can buy a home for in Italy, you can barely maybe even think about a room in some countries. But maybe moving on to the next tier, talking about things from maybe say about 60,000 euros to about 180,000 euros. What do you think a person could expect to buy within that budget?
So I'd say the average person can expect to be able to buy a property for a price within this budget. Let's say that it used to be the norm, what I just said, a few years ago. Now with the inflation, prices are a little bit higher, and I will explain this further later in the episode. But 60 to 180 is a very, very good budget where you can find, a one-bedroom apartment, a studio apartment for 60 to 80,000 easily in the countryside, in villages or small cities throughout Italy. Definitely not bigger cities or major, very popular Italian cities like Milan, Rome, or Florence, or Venice. But 60 to 80 is probably a very, very good budget if you want to buy a small apartment, one bedroom studio. And you could probably go up to 80 to 90 to 100,000 if you want to buy a two-bedroom apartment. Again, excluding major Italian cities where the prices are much higher. And again, in the countryside, or in little villages or in small Italian towns, you could buy single family homes probably for, I'd say, not less than 180,000. So that's probably more for the next year. But I'd say a semi-detached house that's more realistic within that budget. So 150 to 180,000 euros, you could easily find, again, not in one of the major Italian cities, a semi-detached house, which in Italian is bifamiliare, so for two families. And when I say, 160 to 180 for a semi-detached house, I mean newly built or ready to move in without the need to perform any renovation works. And you can find something for less than that amount, 130, 100, a property that requires some renovation works, and it's large enough to fit a family of 3 people. So I'm talking about a semi-detached house, or for even less than that amount, but it would require very heavy renovation works. That it would be something that it would probably not be habitable. And within this price range, you can also find single family homes, but they would either require some renovation works or heavy renovation works. It used to be more possible and realistic in the past years to find single family homes for a price within this price range. But right now, with prices going up, it's becoming a little bit less realistic, especially for newly built houses where the price is definitely no longer under 180,000. And of course, I've said it many times, I'm not talking about the major Italian cities like Milan, Florence, Venice, or Naples, where this price range would not allow you to find a single family home or a detached house. I mean, not that it would be easy because, in these cities, apartments are way more popular because of the population density. But even if you were to purchase an apartment, this would probably be a low budget, mid to low budget. If we're talking about, one of the most famous Italian city like Florence or Milan, or even Rome or Venice or Naples.
Interesting. And so I'm just wondering also, because there are a lot of people who are looking for their, I guess you could say, slice in the sun, and maybe looking for the Tuscan dream and having a small home with a vineyard attached to it. Is that something that might be able to fit in within this price range, or would it have to be in a higher tier?
I believe it would not be possible right now within this price range, especially in Tuscany. Prices are very high right now because Tuscany is very popular and it's a destination chosen by a lot of foreigners. So I'd say it would probably be something that would need to be placed in the next tier.
So speaking of that next tier, what about in the range from, say, maybe about 180,000 to maybe 600,000 euros? What do you think a person could expect there? I mean, it sounds like from what you were saying before, that Tuscan dream might be possible within that budget.
Absolutely. In Italy, that's a very good budget. It's considered to be a very, very good budget. So you would comfortably be able to purchase many properties, even some properties that are considered to be luxury properties. In Italy, for example, a newly built single-family home defined by Italians as villa, doesn't necessarily mean a luxury villa, but a single-family home that an Italian would call villa. Right now, even maybe with a swimming pool, it could be easily within that price range. And also that price range will allow you to get a very, very nice apartment, even in the center or close to the center of a major Italian city, or definitely in the center of a mid-sized, well-known Italian city like Padova or Bologna. You could also easily be able to find apartments in the very center of Venice for that amount, probably, the higher end towards, the 600,000. And if we're talking about the lower end, so like 200,000-300,000, that's also a very, very comfortable amount for you to be able to buy a lot of properties, a lot of apartments in, some of the best mid-sized Italian cities, and also, single-family homes, maybe without a swimming pool, but definitely a single-family home throughout the country. And we have said it many times, prices in the south are lower, so you can expect to be able to buy, for example, a single-family home with a sea view and a swimming pool for 500,000 to 600,000 in Sicily. And of course, within this tier, you can expect, say, from 2.5 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms house, to all the way to 3 to 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms house, very large properties. And by large, I mean according to the Italian standards. So something between, say, over 180 square meters all the way to 300 square meters. In Italy, it's a little bit hard to find pretty much anywhere something that is bigger than 300 square meters, which in America is way more easy to find. But, in Italy, we have a higher population density. We don't have a lot of space. They're not building a lot of properties. And what's built already is normally 300 square meters max, with, of course, some exceptions. And of course, when talking about square meters, I should probably specify that 150 square meters is a very, very good size in Italy for an apartment. And it's something that is considered to be very, very large, whereas 300 square meters is something to be considered very large for a single family home, meaning that the average size of a single family home is probably between 150 to 190 square meters, and the average size of an apartment is probably between 80 meters and 120 meters.
And also, just to add a little bit of extra context there, 200 square meters is probably about like 2,150 some odd square feet, and 300 square meters, I believe, is somewhere around 3,230, something along those lines. So we are talking about very fair amount of space to have there for yourself, maybe more than you might ever need. But Marco, just a question for you here. If you had somebody coming to you as one of your clients and they're, say, 2 adults, 1, 2, maybe 3 children, and they're thinking about moving to Italy, what do you think a very realistic budget would look like if they're looking for an average-sized Italian apartment that's spacious enough for them in a city that will also give them access to various amenities and activities?
So excluding the most famous Italian cities that I've mentioned, I think a good budget would be about 150,000 euros. Also, I wanted to mention that 3 children, that's probably something that, you could go for an apartment. But like I said, many times apartments in Italy tend to be on the smaller side. So it's not going to be probably easy to find a big enough apartment for 5 people. Of course, it's 3 small children, but still, I don't think it's that easy. Not impossible, definitely, but that easy as it would be in other countries like in the US.
What about for, say, a couple who has retired, they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and they're thinking about moving to Italy and they just need a place that's large enough for the 2 of them? What kind of budget do you think you would recommend in that case?
So again, excluding major Italian cities, I'd say that a 2-bedroom apartment would cost between 100 and 120,000 euros. So that would be very easy to find pretty much anywhere in Italy, excluding the major Italian cities that I've mentioned before.
Thanks so much, Marco, for sharing these ideal budgets to go with, because I know we've shared a lot of different price ranges here, because some of the numbers that we've discussed may be some of the properties that you really have to search for, that really take a little bit more time, or some of the deals or some of the luxury pricing that might be possible. But to have the idea also there of what a realistic budget could or maybe even should look like shares an important insight into what somebody should be considering when moving to Italy. But Marco, thank you so much again for making yourself available for this episode. And of course, if anybody needs help with getting their home in Italy, how can they get in contact with you and your team?
People can contact us through our website, italianrealestatelawyers.com, or give us a call. Our number is on our website.
Absolutely fantastic. And if you're interested in more about purchasing property, renting property in Italy, moving to Italy, and relocation to Italy, make sure that you are subscribed to this YouTube channel as well as the audio-only podcast. And of course, if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, that means you're also automatically subscribed to the Italian Citizenship podcast, where Marco and I talk about some of the legal aspects of moving to Italy. And also, if you're interested in more about life abroad and living abroad, be sure to come over to my YouTube channel and podcast called Not Your Average Globetrotter, which you can find through YouTube, a Google search, or a search on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. But of course, Mr. Marco Permunian from ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com, thank you so much again for making yourself available. This has been another episode of the Italian Real Estate Podcast. I'm Rafael Di Furia. Stay safe and healthy out there, and we will see you all next time. Later.
Thank you.